In 1987, a young couple checked into Room 6 at a roadside motel off Highway 16. By morning, they were gone. Their car was found in the lot. Their belongings were neatly packed inside, but the bed was unslept in, and their names were crossed out in the motel ledger. For 35 years, no one knew what happened inside that room. Until now, if you're fascinated by unsolved mysteries and chilling disappearances, make sure to subscribe. October 12th, 1987. The night was warm, the kind of heavy Texas night where the air itself seemed to press down. Highway 16 stretched endless and dark, the glow of the couple's headlights the only thing carving through the blackness. Tom and Claire Dwyer had been married just 2 years. They were teachers, both only 26, driving south after visiting Claire's family in Fredericksburg. Tired, they spotted a blinking neon vacancy sign ahead. Highway 16 Motel, clean rooms, low rates. The motel was squat, L-shaped, with 10 rooms facing the cracked parking lot. A Coke machine hummed outside the office. The clerk, a man with a drooping mustache and a slow drawl, slid the guest book across the counter. "Names, please." Claire wrote her looping signature first, then Tom. The clerk glanced at them, then at the book, before passing them a brass key stamped with a 6. "Room 6, he said. "Checkout's at 11. They carried their single overnight bag inside. The curtains were thin. A moth battered itself against the light. Later, the night clerk swore he heard a door slam sometime after midnight. When he checked the lot, their red Honda Civic was still parked. But by dawn, Room 6 was empty. The bed was made, the key lay on the nightstand, and in the guest book, their names had been scratched out with thick black ink. Present day. 2022. The motel sat abandoned now, a husk of rotting wood and peeling paint. A faded vacancy sign swayed on rusted hinges. Wind carried dust across the cracked asphalt, whispering through broken windows. Detective Erin Calloway parked her unmarked car at the edge of the lot. She wasn't on duty. She hadn't been assigned this case. But tonight, she felt the pull again. The same pull that had haunted her since childhood, when she first heard her grandmother mention the couple who vanished at Highway 16. Erin was 38 now, a seasoned investigator with Austin PD. But the Dwyer case wasn't in her files. It was folklore, whispered in old newspapers and campfire stories. Teachers who vanished. A room that erased its occupants. Her flashlight beam cut through the lobby's darkness. The air smelled of mildew and wet rot. The counter was still there, coated in grime, the ledger sitting beneath cracked glass. She forced it open with a gloved hand. The entries were faded, water-stained. September 1987. October, and there, in Claire's looping script, Claire and Tom Dwyer. A neat line, Room 6. Directly across the page, the thick stroke of black ink, their names obliterated. Erin traced it with her finger. "Why cross them out?" she murmured. It wasn't motel protocol. Every other entry was intact. Behind her, the floor creaked. She swung her light, but only dust motes danced in the beam. She let out a long breath. This place had been abandoned since 1994, when the owner, Harold Finch, died of a stroke. Locals said he drank himself to death, raving about things in the walls. His son had sold off the land, but no one touched the building. Too much rot, too much reputation. Erin stepped outside and walked toward Room 6. The door was swollen, warped from rain, but it opened under her shoulder. The room smelled of damp carpet and old cigarettes. The bed frame was rusted, the mattress gone. Wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing plaster. A cracked mirror leaned against the far wall, warped and cloudy. She imagined the Dwyers stepping inside. Tired, maybe laughing at how cheap the place was, unaware that the next morning they'd simply stop existing. Her phone buzzed. It was Jacob, her partner at the department. "Calloway, you ghost hunting again?" he teased. She smiled faintly. "Something like that. You at Highway 16. He knew her too well. "Yeah, I found the ledger. Their names are still there. Crossed out creepy," he said. "But you know this isn't a case." They walked away, maybe ran off together. "People do it all the time." "Not like this," she replied, sharper than intended. "Their car was left behind. Their bag was packed. The bed wasn't slept in." Jacob sighed. 35 years, Erin. You're chasing ghosts." She didn't answer. Her light caught something on the floor, a faint dark stain beneath the warped boards, circular, like a spill that never washed away. She crouched, brushing aside dust. Not wine, not paint, blood. Her pulse quickened. The stain had been there for decades, but the motel had never been properly investigated, not with modern forensics. Back then, rural sheriffs shrugged off disappearances. Young couples ran away all the time, but Erin knew better. She felt it in her bones. Something had happened in this room, something violent. She stood, sweeping the light across the walls. Scratches marred the plaster near the mirror. Parallel grooves, like fingernail marks, etched deep. Her stomach turned. This wasn't folklore. This was a crime scene, and someone, somewhere, had worked very hard to keep it buried. The next morning, Erin sat at her kitchen table with the motel ledger spread open under bright light. She had taken it from the abandoned office the night before, slipping it carefully into a plastic evidence bag. It wasn't official. Not yet. But her instincts told her this was important. The book was water-damaged, its pages curled and yellowed, but the entries were still legible. Guests scrawled their names, sometimes with little notes. Honeymoon, passing through, family of 4. Her eyes kept returning to one line. Claire and Tom Dwyer. Room 6. The handwriting was neat, precise. Erin imagined Claire pausing to write, her husband waiting beside her, and then the thick, almost angry slash of ink that erased their names. She ran her thumb across the indentation on the opposite page. Whoever crossed it out pressed hard enough to dent the paper. She closed her eyes. It wasn't procedure. Hotels and motels never crossed out guests' names. They added checkout dates, maybe initials, but never this. Erin reached for her phone and snapped photos of the ledger. She sent one to Jacob with a short caption. Not folklore, evidence. While the coffee brewed, she opened her laptop. Old archives weren't easy to find, but she knew where to look. San Antonio Express News, October 14th, 1987. Local couple vanishes on highway trip. The article was short. Tom and Claire Dwyer of Austin failed to return from a weekend trip. Their vehicle was found at Highway 16 Motel in Bandera County. Personal items were inside the car. The case remains under investigation. She scrolled further. Bandera County Sheriff declines to comment. No follow-ups, no arrests. Just silence. She leaned back in her chair. They wanted this buried, she murmured. Her phone buzzed. Jacob again. Calloway, you know chain of custody matters, right? You can't just swipe evidence from a crime scene. She smiled wryly. It wasn't a crime scene anymore. County let that place rot for 30 years. It's still trespassing. Then charge me. There was a pause. What do you think you're going to find? The truth, she said simply. By afternoon, Erin was on the road, driving south. The sun blazed across the hill country, painting the limestone cliffs in pale gold. Her destination, Bandera County Courthouse. Inside, the air was cool, smelling faintly of dust and old paper. She approached the clerk's office. I'm looking for case files from 1987, she explained. Missing persons, Tom and Claire Dwyer. The clerk, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes, frowned. That's a long time ago. Most records are boxed in storage. Could take a while. I'll wait. The clerk disappeared, returning 40 minutes later with a cardboard box. Aaron carried it to a table and began sorting through. The file was thin: a missing persons report, statements from family, sheriff's notes in blue ink, no photographs of the motel, no forensic tests. One line stood out in the sheriff's report: no signs of foul play. Suspect voluntary disappearance. Aaron muttered, "Voluntary?" With their car and luggage left behind. There was also a note in the margin: owner cooperative. No further action necessary. The owner, Harold Finch. Aaron remembered the stories. That Finch had been a quiet, lonely man, living in the office even after the motel closed. Locals said he drank at the bar down the road, muttering about voices in the walls. He died in 1994. No one inherited the property. At the bottom of the file, she found a faded Polaroid clipped to the report. The image showed the Dwyer's Honda Civic parked neatly in front of Room 6. The room door stood open. Darkness inside. She studied the photo closely. In the corner of the frame, behind the window glass, there was a faint outline. Something pale. A face, maybe. Her pulse quickened. She snapped a photo with her phone, enlarging it. The resolution was poor, but the suggestion of eyes and a mouth stared back at her. She sat back, unsettled. The sheriff had dismissed it as nothing. But what if the truth was staring right at them and no one cared to see? By dusk, Aaron drove out of town and stopped at a roadside diner. The place smelled of fried onions and coffee. Locals hunched over booths, their cowboy hats tilted low. She ordered pie and struck up conversation with the waitress, a woman in her 60s. "Ever hear of the Highway 16 motel?" Aaron asked. The waitress froze, pie knife hovering mid-air. "Why you asking about that place?" "I'm looking into the Dwyer's disappearance." 1987. The woman's mouth tightened. "Terrible business. Folks don't like talking about it. Why not?" "Because nothing good ever came out of that motel. People went missing. Not just them. Others too. Travelers, drifters." Sheriff never cared. Aaron leaned forward. "Others? How many?" The waitress shrugged, uneasy. "Hard to say. 4, maybe 5. Always folks passing through. Their cars turned up, but the people didn't." Her voice dropped. "Some say Finch had a room he never rented out. A room nobody talked about." "Which room?" The woman hesitated, then whispered, 6. Aaron felt a chill run through her. That night, back at her hotel, Aaron pinned photographs and notes to the wall. The ledger, the Polaroid, the sheriff's dismissive report. At the center, she taped the word in red ink. Room 6. She sat on the bed, staring at it. Somewhere between that ledger and that Polaroid, the truth was buried. And she was going to dig it up, no matter what it cost. The motel looked different under moonlight. Aaron returned just after 10, parking at the edge of the cracked lot. Her headlights washed across the building's facade, catching the peeling paint and broken windows. Shadows pooled around Room 6 like an open mouth. She turned off the engine and sat in silence, the cicadas shrilling in the trees. Her pulse thrummed. She hadn't told Jacob she was coming back tonight. He would have warned her off. Too dangerous, Calloway. Too obsessed. But obsession was the fuel. She took a recorder from her bag, pressed the red button. Detective Aaron Calloway, Highway 16 Motel, Room 6, October 14th, 2022. Night entry. Her flashlight beam wavered across the lot. She walked to the office first. The door creaked, groaned like it resented being disturbed. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with mildew. She set the recorder on the counter. Ledger recovered. Names crossed out. Ink stroke aggressive, deliberate. She paused. Possibility that Finch himself altered the record. She moved deeper inside. Papers scattered across the floor. Old receipts curling with age. In the corner, an overturned chair lay where it had fallen decades ago. The silence pressed in, and then she heard it. A faint scratching sound from the wall behind the counter. She froze, heart hammering. It was steady, deliberate, like fingernails dragging along plaster. She swung the flashlight. Nothing but rotted wallpaper, water stains, and dust. The sound stopped. Her throat tightened. "Possible animal activity," she whispered into the recorder, though her voice shook. But deep down, she knew it hadn't been an animal. The rhythm was too human. The next morning, Erin sat in Bandera's public library, scrolling through microfilm reels of old newspapers. The librarian, a frail man with nicotine-stained fingers, threaded the reel for her and left her to it. Headlines rolled past her eyes. Local rodeo queen crowned, county fair attendance highest yet. Man missing after truck breaks down near Medina Lake. She stopped. The article was dated June 1986, a year before the Dwyers vanished. Hitchhiker reported missing after checking into Highway 16 Motel. Her chest tightened. The article was short, just a paragraph. A young man traveling from Dallas to Corpus Christi was last seen checking into the Highway 16 Motel. His vehicle was later found abandoned. Sheriff Finch reports no evidence of foul play. Another dismissal, another silence. She scribbled notes, flipping forward. August 1985. 2 sisters disappear en route to San Antonio. Last known stop, Highway 16 Motel. Her stomach dropped. The Dwyers weren't the first. They weren't even the second. This was a pattern. By noon, she was at the county archives again, requesting anything on Harold Finch, the motel owner. The clerk brought another box, thinner than she expected. Finch's death certificate. Cause, heart failure, age 64. A short obituary. Survived by one son, Michael Finch. Last known address in Houston. Erin's pulse quickened. A son, still alive. She copied the address, though she knew after 30 years it would be outdated. Still, it was a thread. As she packed up the file, the clerk gave her a look. "You digging up Finch?" Trying to understand what happened at that motel. The woman snorted. "You won't find peace there. Just ghosts." That evening, Erin stopped at a local bar. The neon beer signs buzzed above her, the air thick with cigarette smoke. Old men lined the counter, their voices low. She ordered a soda and struck up conversation with the bartender, a heavy-set man with tattooed forearms. "Highway 16 Motel," she said. "You ever hear stories about Finch?" The bartender's eyes narrowed. "You're not from around here." "No, I'm a detective out of Austin, looking into cold cases." The man wiped the counter, slower than necessary. "Finch kept to himself. Didn't talk much. Drank bourbon. Played the jukebox. Folks said he was strange, but strange don't make you a killer." "What did they say about Room 6? The man stilled. She held his gaze. Finally, he muttered, "That's where he kept him." Erin's pulse spiked. "Kept who?" The bartender shook his head. "Never saw nothing myself. Just talk. People said sometimes, late at night, they heard screaming. But when deputies came, place was quiet. Finch always smiled, always showed him nothing. Sheriff figured he was harmless, but me," he leaned closer. "I think Finch was a collector, and Room 6 was his box." Collector. The word sank into her gut like a stone. She couldn't sleep that night. The ledger lay on the motel bed beside her, open to the Dwyer's entry. The thick black slash glared under lamplight. Room 6 was his box. She imagined Finch sitting behind the counter, waiting for weary travelers to stumble in. He'd hand them the brass key, watch them disappear into the room. And then what? Her phone buzzed. A message from Jacob. "You still on this? Don't get lost in ghosts, Erin." She stared at the screen, then typed back. Not ghosts. Graves. She turned off the light, but the ledger's presence lingered, as if the book itself was watching her. The address Erin had copied from the archives belonged to a faded apartment complex in Houston's East End. She drove down on a gray morning, clouds hanging low and heavy, drizzle streaking her windshield. The complex looked tired. Rust stains bled down the stucco walls. Bicycles lay abandoned in the grass. A pit bull barked from a balcony, straining against its chain. Apartment 3C, Michael Finch. She knocked. The door opened just a crack, held by a chain. A man peered out, mid-40s, hollow-eyed, his hair thin at the temples. Yes? Michael Finch? Who's asking? Erin held up her badge. Detective Calloway, Austin PD. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your father. The chain rattled. The door opened wider. Michael stepped back, scratching his arm nervously. You're a little late. He's been dead almost 30 years. I know, Erin said gently. This is about the motel. Highway 16. Something flickered across his face. Fear, or maybe recognition. He gestured for her to come in. The apartment smelled of stale smoke and microwave dinners. A half-empty bottle of whiskey sat on the table, surrounded by unopened mail. Michael dropped into a chair. I figured this day might come. You mean someone asking about the Dwyers? He gave a bitter laugh. Or the others. Take your pick. Erin's pulse quickened. What do you mean, the others? Michael rubbed his hands together. You think I don't know what people said about him? That he was a monster? A killer? He shook his head. He wasn't. Not exactly. Not exactly. Michael lit a cigarette, exhaling toward the ceiling. He had appetites. Not sexual. Not the way people think. He was lonely. Broken. Said he liked having people close where they couldn't leave. He told me once the motel walls were thin, and when guests cried, he felt less alone. Erin felt a chill. So he admitted hurting people? Michael's eyes were bloodshot. He wouldn't meet her gaze. He never said it outright. But when I was a kid, I heard noises. From room 6. I asked him about it, and he said it was just the pipes. But pipes don't beg. Pipes don't scream, Erin's breath caught. Did you ever see anything? He ground the cigarette out hard. One time, I was 12. He sent me to fetch a tool from the shed behind the office. I passed the window of room 6. Curtains were open. A girl was inside, tied to the bed. She looked right at me. Mouth gagged, eyes like... He broke off, shuddering. I ran. I didn't tell nobody. Not my mom, not the sheriff. Because I was scared of him, my own father. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Erin finally asked, what happened to her? Michael's voice dropped. By the next day, she was gone. Curtains shut, room clean. He looked up, tears in his eyes. And I said nothing. I carried it all my life. Erin's chest tightened. Michael, if what you're telling me is true, there could be victims buried near that motel. Did anyone ever search the grounds? He laughed bitterly. Search? Sheriff drank with my old man. He'd come by, pat him on the back, say, how's business, Harold? He didn't want trouble. Nobody did. Missing folks were just paperwork to him. Erin leaned forward. Do you know if your father kept journals? Records? Michael shook his head. If he did, he hid them. I never saw anything. He lit another cigarette, his hand trembling. But I know one thing. He was obsessed with room 6. Called it his collection room. Said the walls kept secrets. I think he meant it. Erin shivered. She left the apartment an hour later, her mind buzzing. If Michael was telling the truth, the motel wasn't just a place of disappearance. It was a container, a vault. And room 6 was the lock. That evening, back in Bandera, Erin met Jacob in a diner booth. He looked irritated, pushing aside his coffee. You're in Houston now, he demanded. You're supposed to be on leave, not chasing urban legends. She slid her notes across the table. Michael Finch admitted seeing a girl tied up in room 6. He called it the collection room. Sheriff covered it up. Jacob frowned. And you believe him? A drunk who grew up in a nightmare? Trauma plays tricks. People misremember. I believe him, Aaron said firmly. Jacob rubbed his forehead. Even if he's telling the truth, Finch is dead. You can't put a corpse on trial. It's not about him, she said. It's about the victims. They deserve to be found, Jacob sighed. So what's your plan? I want a ground-penetrating radar survey of the property. If bodies are buried near the motel, it'll show. Jacob shook his head. You'll need a court order. Good luck convincing a judge on 35-year-old hearsay. Aaron stared out the window at the dark stretch of Highway 16. Neon glowed faintly in the distance, the motel sign still clinging to life. Then I'll convince them, she said softly, because room 6 isn't done speaking. That night she drove once more to the motel. She parked in silence, letting the engine tick cool. The sign buzzed weakly above, a dying heartbeat of light. She stepped into room 6, her flashlight beam catching the cracked mirror, the gouged plaster. She closed her eyes and imagined the girl Michael had seen, tied, gagged, staring out the window with desperate eyes. Aaron whispered into the recorder, "Victims are still here. They're waiting." The silence pressed in, and then, faint, almost imagined, came the sound of breathing. Not hers, not the wind. A shallow, steady inhale and exhale just beyond the mirror. Her hand trembled on the flashlight. "Hello?" she whispered. No answer, just breathing. She stepped closer, pulse roaring in her ears. The mirror's surface was cloudy, warped. For an instant, she thought she saw movement, a flicker of pale skin, eyes wide in the dark. Her heart lurched, and then the sound stopped. The mirror reflected only her own face, pale, tense, staring back. The request sat heavy on Judge Harlow's desk, surrounded by neat stacks of paper and the scent of stale coffee. Aaron had drafted it at midnight, citing Michael Finch's testimony, the Dwyer's unsolved disappearance, and a half-dozen other missing persons cases from the same era. Now, in the polished wood of the Bandera courthouse, she waited. The judge peered over his reading glasses. "Detective Calloway, you're asking for ground-penetrating radar and potential excavation of private property, based on the recollections of a man who admits he was 12 years old at the time. 35 years ago." "Yes, Your Honor," Aaron said evenly. "Do you have physical evidence tying the Finch property to a crime?" She hesitated. The silence in room 6 pressed against her chest, even here, in daylight. "Not yet, but I believe we will." Harlow sighed, removing his glasses. "I'll authorize a limited survey. Nothing more until we see results. You'll coordinate with the county relief washed through her." "Thank you." Outside, Jacob caught up with her on the courthouse steps. "You did it," he said, surprised. "For now." She exhaled. "Let's see what's under that ground." The next morning, heavy equipment arrived at the motel. A white van with radar equipment, technicians unloading cables and monitors. Aaron stood nearby with Jacob, watching the preparations. Dean Kincaid, the property's current owner, shuffled up nervously, chewing the inside of his cheek. "You really think you're gonna find bodies out here?" Aaron didn't answer. She didn't want to. The technicians began their slow grid work, dragging radar sleds across the gravel lot behind the motel. The machines beeped faintly, transmitting data to laptops. Colored lines traced across screens, translating Earth into patterns of density. For hours they worked, silence broken only by the hum of machines and the caw of distant crows. Aaron walked the perimeter, eyes fixed on the ground, every step charged with the possibility of revelation. Near dusk, one of the technicians called her over. "Detective, you'll want to see this on the monitor. beneath a patch of earth between the office and Room 6, lay irregular voids, disturbances in the soil shaped like elongated ovals. Could be old utility trenches, the technician offered, but his voice lacked conviction. Aaron's stomach turned. Or graves. 2 days later, the excavation began. Deputies marked off the area with crime scene tape. Shovels bit into the dry earth. Reporters gathered at the highway's edge, their voices carrying on the breeze. The first few feet yielded nothing but rocks and old soda cans. Then, at 30 inches, the soil darkened. One deputy's shovel struck something solid. A hush fell. He crouched, brushing dirt aside with his gloved hand. Bone. A fragment of skull, yellowed with age. Someone swore softly. Another deputy called for evidence bags. Erin's pulse thundered. She forced herself to remain steady, jotting notes, marking coordinates. The dig continued, careful now, brushes replacing shovels. Piece by piece, they uncovered more. A jawbone with teeth intact, long bones of arms and legs, ribs collapsed inward. Beside the remains lay fragments of cloth, faded, brittle, but still recognizable as a woman's blouse. Erin stared, heart aching. "Susan Dwyer," she whispered. The discovery broke in the news within hours. "Remains found at Highway 16 Motel," the anchors declared, their polished voices reverent, almost gleeful. But in Erin's motel room that night, the weight of it pressed hard. She sat at the edge of the bed, recorder in hand. "Today we found what's likely the first victim, possibly Susan Dwyer. The soil still holds more." Finch's collection room was not just metaphor. Her voice cracked. She stopped the tape. The motel walls creaked around her, alive with memory. In the silence, something brushed faintly against the door. A whisper of fabric, a shadow shifting. She froze. Then, a soft knock, 3 gentle taps. She rose, throat tight. "Who's there?" No answer. She pulled the door open. The corridor stretched empty, dimly lit by the flickering neon outside. Nothing moved, but when she stepped back inside, the air was colder. She looked toward the mirror. For an instant, reflected there, she swore she saw a woman. Dark hair, hollow eyes, staring at her from the bed. Erin's heart slammed. She spun, but the bed was empty. Only silence remained. The next morning, deputies uncovered a second set of remains. Smaller bones, shoes buried alongside them, scuffed children's sneakers. The press erupted. "Motel of Bones! Highway of Horror!" Erin gave no interviews. She stood at the edge of the excavation, fists clenched, staring down at the child's remains. Jacob touched her shoulder. "You need rest." Her eyes burned. Rest won't bring them back. That night, she dreamed of Room 6. The walls bulged as if filled with breath. Hands pressed from inside the plaster, stretching outward, straining to break free. Voices whispered all around. "Help us! Don't leave us here!" She woke gasping, the taste of earth in her mouth. The county coroner's office smelled of antiseptic and cold steel. Erin stood just inside the viewing gallery, arms crossed tight, as Dr. Lydia Foster leaned over the remains laid out on stainless steel tables. The adult skeleton, likely Susan Dwyer, was fragile, the bones yellowed with time. The child's smaller frame lay on a separate table, arranged with care. Foster pulled off her gloves. Both sets are female. The adult was in her early 30s. Dental records should confirm whether she's Susan Dwyer. The child, around 8 or 9 years old. "We'll need comparison DNA to be certain," Erin nodded, throat tight. "Cause of death?" Jacob asked from beside her. Foster shook her head. "Too much degradation. No obvious trauma on the bones, but binding marks on the wrists and ankles, depressions consistent with rope." She tapped the child's radius, where faint grooves circled the bone. "That's restraint." Prolonged, Erin felt her stomach lurch. She turned away, pressing a hand to her mouth. Foster continued clinically. We'll collect soil samples, check for fibers, chemical traces. Whoever buried them wasn't careful. That may work in our favor. Jacob leaned closer to Erin. You okay? She nodded quickly, though her pulse thundered. I just needed to hear it out loud. Proof. By the following week, the motel had become a circus. Satellite vans crowded the roadside. Journalists prowled the gravel lot, microphones ready. Locals gathered in knots, whispering, pointing. Dean Kincaid, the owner, stood near the tape, his face pale and sweaty. This place is ruined, he muttered when Erin passed. Nobody's gonna stay here now. Might as well burn it down. Maybe it should have been burned years ago. Erin replied coldly. That night, the evening news ran interviews with old-timers. One woman remembered screams in the night but claimed she thought they were honeymooners. A former deputy, now retired, admitted the sheriff didn't like to stir up trouble. Erin watched from her motel bed, remote dangling from her hand. The faces on the screen blurred. The voices sounded distant. She shut the TV off and sat in silence, staring at the wall. Room 6 pressed around her like a coffin. 2 days later, DNA confirmed the remains. Susan Dwyer, her daughter Amy. The news cracked through the community like thunder. Candlelight vigils sprang up in Austin. Old photos of Susan and Amy filled newspapers. The words closure and justice were repeated until they lost meaning. But Erin knew closure was a lie. Finding bones wasn't the same as bringing them home. Late one night, unable to sleep, Erin returned to the excavation site. The trenches gaped open under floodlights. Plastic tarps flapped in the wind. She walked to the edge of the deepest pit, peered down into the dark earth. Her breath fogged in the cold. The air shifted. A whisper brushed her ear. Why did you wait so long? She spun. The site was empty. Only shadows moved. Her pulse raced. She crouched, clutching the recorder. September 17th. Returned to the site at 1:45 a.m. I believe there may be more victims here. The ground feels restless. Her own voice shook. A sudden sound, sharp, metallic. She turned. A shovel leaned against the tape had toppled, falling hard against the gravel. Erin's breath caught. Slowly, she walked over, uprighted it, forcing her hands not to tremble. When she looked back toward the pit, her blood froze. At the bottom, illuminated faintly by the floodlight, was a shadow, human-shaped. Standing upright in the soil, head tilted. Watching her, her flashlight beam snapped on, and nothing was there, only disturbed earth. She staggered back, chest heaving. The next morning, she met Jacob at the diner. He studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes. You're unraveling, he said gently. She stirred her untouched coffee. They're still there, Jacob. More of them. I feel it. Feelings aren't evidence. She looked up sharply. Then why did Finch's son say he saw a girl? Why did the radar show more voids we haven't dug yet? Jacob hesitated. We need warrants for the next phase. It'll take time. Time they never had, she snapped. The table fell silent. Outside, Highway 16 stretched empty under the morning sun. That night, Erin dreamed again. She was in room 6, sitting at the edge of the bed. The walls breathed in and out, in and out. A voice whispered behind her. We're still here. She turned. The bed was full. Figures lay side by side, bodies half buried in sheets of soil. Their faces pale, hollow-eyed, mouths open in silent screams. And in the center, a child, clutching a blue handbag. When she woke, the motel room was silent. But the handbag sat on her table. She had never brought it there. The handbag wouldn't stop staring at her. It sat on the small round table of room 6, its vinyl faded, clasp tarnished, smelling faintly of mildew. Erin had seen it before, in photographs of the excavation. buried with the child's bones. But this one, she hadn't signed it out of evidence, hadn't requested it, and yet here it was. She circled it slowly, phone flashlight in hand. Her reflection warped across the metal clasp. The tag inside had been scorched, words erased. "Not possible," she whispered. She touched the recorder. September 19th. Room 6. Evidence bag has appeared in my quarters. I can't explain it. The walls creaked. She froze. A faint scritch came from behind the plaster, like nails dragged inside the walls. Her pulse hammered. She pressed her palm flat against the wallpaper. The vibration was real. "Help us." The whisper slid into her ear as if breathed directly against her skin. Erin jerked back, heart thundering. She grabbed her flashlight, sweeping it across the walls. One patch of plaster above the bed's headboard looked different, a faint discoloration, like someone had patched it hastily. She stepped closer. The beam caught small scratches at eye level. Letters. She leaned in, tracing with her fingertip. HELPBELOW. Her breath caught. She backed away, fumbling for her multi-tool. Within minutes, she was prying at the plaster, each crack of the wall louder than thunder in the silence. Chunks fell, dust filling the air. Behind the plaster, wrapped in brittle cloth, was a bundle. Her hands shook as she pulled it free, laying it on the bed. She unwrapped layers of stained fabric. Inside lay a notebook. The leather was cracked, pages warped from moisture, but the ink remained legible. Harold Finch's handwriting. She opened it carefully, heart pounding. The first page was dated 1981. Room 6. My collection begins. They never leave me now. Their voices stay when the others go. Her stomach turned. She flipped pages, scanning feverishly. June 1982. A mother and child. She cried all night. The girl wouldn't stop staring. I had to hush them. September 1983. Sheriff stopped by for whiskey. He never asked about the smells. April 1984. The pipes sing when they bleed. The walls remember page after page, cryptic, horrifying, clinical. Erin's vision blurred. She whispered into the recorder, "Recovered Finch's journal, hidden behind Room 6 wall, contains dates, references to multiple victims." Her throat tightened. She snapped photos of the pages with her phone, hands trembling. Then a sound froze her. Footsteps. In the hall, slow, deliberate, approaching. She killed the light, heart hammering. The door handle rattled. Someone whispered from the other side. Not one voice, many. Overlapping, hushed, like a chorus. "We are still here." Erin backed against the wall, clutching the journal to her chest. The handle rattled again, then stilled. Silence. She waited, pulse pounding in her ears. Finally, she dared switch on the light. The door was still locked from the inside. No one was there, only the journal in her hands, heavier than bone. The next morning, she brought it straight to Jacob at the station. He skimmed the photos, his face tightening. If this is authentic, it's damning. But he shut the file. Chain of custody's compromised. You found it alone, no witnesses. A defense attorney would shred this. Erin's jaw clenched. You think I planted it? I think you're too close. You're sleeping in the crime scene, Erin. You're not thinking clearly. Her voice broke. These people were buried like trash, Jacob. Their voices deserve to be heard. This journal is them screaming. He exhaled slowly. Then we verify. We'll bring in handwriting analysts, date the ink, test the paper. If it holds up, it's evidence. If not, he didn't finish. Erin stared at the photos. Each line of Finch's handwriting burned into her mind. The pipes sing when they bleed. She whispered, "It'll hold." That night, alone in Room 6 again, she placed the journal on the table beside the handbag. Her recorder blinked red. Her own voice, weary, filled the silence. I believe Finch used this room as a mausoleum, a shrine. The walls kept his victims even after death. She closed her eyes. The walls exhaled. When she opened them again, the journal lay open on a different page, one she hadn't turned to. The ink read, September 19th. The detective stays in my room now. She listens well. She will join the collection. Erin staggered back, breath tearing from her throat. Her hands shook. The entry looked fresh. Wet ink glistened under the lamplight. Erin stared at the journal long after the ink should have dried. Her hands trembled as she reached out, brushing the page. The letters smudged faintly under her fingertip. Fresh. Impossible. She snapped the book shut, shoved it into her bag, and paced the length of room 6. The walls seemed closer tonight, shadows swelling in the corners. Every creak of the floorboards made her flinch. Sleep came only in fragments, haunted by visions of the Dwyers' hollow-eyed faces, Susan clutching Amy, whispering, "Why did you leave us?" When she woke, dawn light streamed weakly through the curtains, but her mind felt no clearer. At the station, Jacob was waiting. His jaw tightened when he saw her. "Your report says the journal added an entry while you were in the room." His tone was careful, deliberate. Erin dropped into the chair opposite him. "I know how it sounds. But it happened. Ink was wet." "Erin," Jacob leaned forward, "I think you need rest. Maybe counseling. This case is eating you alive." She shot him a sharp look. "You think I'm hallucinating?" "I think exhaustion can play tricks," he said gently. "You've been living inside Finch's nightmare for weeks." Her chest tightened. "If I step away now, those voices get buried again?" "I can't," Jacob sighed, rubbing his temples. "The sheriff's office is talking about shutting the site down. Too much media frenzy. Too many people tramping around. If we don't secure solid evidence soon, they'll pave over history." Erin's hand curled into a fist. "Then we find more. There are still voids on the radar. More graves or more old septic tanks," Jacob countered. "You're staking your sanity on whispers in the dark." Her voice hardened. "Better whispers than silence." That afternoon, Erin drove into town for coffee. As she stepped out of the shop, an elderly woman intercepted her. Thin, wiry, eyes sharp as nails. "You're the detective," the woman said. "The one digging up the motel." Erin nodded cautiously. The woman leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You be careful in that place." Harold Finch wasn't the only one. He had help. Erin froze. "Help?" The woman glanced around before continuing. "My cousin worked housekeeping there back in the 80s. She said Harold's boy watched everything, brought things to the room, towels, food. Sometimes ropes. Always silent, like it was normal." "Michael?" Erin asked, pulse quickening. The woman's eyes narrowed. "He was a child, but children can be taught." "Don't think the sins ended with Harold." Erin's mouth went dry. Before she could ask more, the woman walked off briskly, vanishing into the crowd. That night, Erin confronted Michael Finch at his Houston apartment. He looked gaunt, circles under his eyes deeper than before. "You told me you were afraid of your father," she said, stepping inside uninvited. "But people saw you carrying things into room 6. Supplies." "Ropes." Michael's face paled. "I was a kid." "You knew," she pressed. "You helped." His hands shook. "I didn't understand." "I thought it was a game. He told me it was hide and seek, that the girls were actresses. By the time I knew better, it was too late." "Too late for how many?" Michael sank onto the couch, head in his hands. "I don't know." "He never let me count. He said numbers ruined the magic, but I still hear them. At night." Their voices. Erin's skin crawled. Michael looked up, eyes red. "And now you hear them too, don't you?" She flinched. He smiled bitterly. "They don't stop once they find you." Back in Bandera, Jacob called her into his office. A stack of papers lay on his desk. "Erin," he said quietly, "the sheriff wants you off the case." Effective immediately. They think you're compromised. Obsessed. Her chest constricted. You agreed with them? I told them you care too much, not too little, Jacob said. But you're unraveling. I see it. Her throat tightened. If they bury this, they won't, he cut in. But you need distance. Take a week. Clear your head. She stared at him, fury and despair clashing inside her. Distance doesn't bring them peace. Digging does. She turned and walked out before he could answer. That night, alone again in room 6, Erin spread the journal across the bed. Her hands shook as she flipped pages, each line darker than the last. Her recorder blinked red. September 21st. They're taking me off the case, but Finch's journal isn't finished. I feel it writing itself when I'm not looking. I'm afraid it's using me. The walls creaked. The lamp flickered. She froze. The journal lay open on a fresh page. Ink bled across it, curling into letters as she watched. Detective Calloway joins the collection tonight. Her breath hitched. From the mirror, she heard breathing. Not hers. The mirror was breathing again. Erin sat frozen on the edge of the bed, eyes locked on its cloudy surface. A faint mist rose and fell, like lungs expanding. She gripped the recorder so tightly her knuckles ached. This is Detective Erin Calloway, she whispered. It's past midnight. Room 6. It feels alive. Her own reflection wavered. For an instant, she saw another face overlay hers. Hollow cheeks, empty eyes, lips forming words she couldn't hear. She staggered back, knocking the recorder to the floor. It landed with a hollow crack, but still blinked red. The mirror went still. Only her face stared back now, pale and shaking. She sank against the wall, dragging the recorder into her lap. The journal said I would join them tonight, she whispered. But I'm still here. I won't. Her voice broke. I won't. By morning, Jacob was pounding on her motel door. She opened it slowly. He studied her, hair unkempt, dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling. Jesus, Erin, he muttered. You look like you've been through a war. She stepped aside. Maybe I have. He entered cautiously, eyes falling on the journal spread across the table. You're still living with this thing? It's evidence. It's poison, he shot back. Erin bristled. You didn't hear what Finch's son said. You didn't hear what the locals admitted. This motel was a trap, Jacob, and I think... Her voice faltered. I think it still is. He stared at her. Listen to yourself. I am, she snapped. And I hear them. The silence after her words was suffocating. Jacob sighed. I'm filing a wellness check. You need out of this place before it destroys you. Her chest tightened. Don't you dare take this from me. Then meet me halfway, he said quietly. Come back to Austin tonight. Sleep in your own bed. Clear your head. She shook her head. If I leave, they'll keep me. Jacob frowned. Who? The ones in the walls. That afternoon, she wandered the excavation site, now quiet beneath yellow tape. The pits gaped open like wounds. Wind carried the smell of damp earth. She crouched at the edge, tracing the soil with her glove. How many of you are still here? She whispered. A voice rose faintly, like a child murmuring from beneath the ground. All of us. Erin stumbled back, heart pounding. Her eyes darted to the deputies standing guard. But they didn't react. They hadn't heard. Her skin crawled. That night, she dreamed of Jacob. He stood in the motel office, flipping through the ledger. His name was written there in neat script. Then a thick black line slashed across it. She woke with a cry, drenched in sweat. The journal lay open on the bed. A fresh entry glistened in ink. Jacob will join soon. They always do. Her breath came fast. She seized the book and hurled it against the wall. It landed open, pages fluttering, words crawling across them like insects. She clamped her hands over her ears. "Stop!" But the words kept writing, line after line. "The detective listens well. The walls keep her. Soon, she will rest with us." Morning brought no relief. She stumbled to the diner, desperate for coffee, for noise, for anything human. But the locals stared at her. Conversations hushed when she entered. A man muttered, "That's her, the one sleeping with the ghosts." She gripped her cup tightly, hands trembling. The waitress leaned close, voice low. "Detective, you need to leave that place. Folks are saying you're cursed." Erin met her gaze. "Cursed or chosen?" The waitress paled and stepped back, crossing herself. Back in her motel room, Erin found the journal gone. She searched the table, the floor, under the bed. Nothing. Her chest constricted. "Where are you?" The mirror rippled faintly, like disturbed water. Her reflection smiled, but she hadn't. The mirror was no longer just glass. Erin stood before it, pulse racing, watching her reflection shimmer like water. Her reflection didn't mimic her. It tilted its head when she didn't, smiled when her mouth stayed still. The journal was gone, but its voice lingered. Words whispered inside her skull, familiar now. "Join us. Stay with us. The walls are waiting." Her breath trembled. "I'm not yours," she whispered. The reflection leaned closer, lips moving soundlessly. Then the glass fogged, and letters scrawled themselves across the surface, clear as ink. S-I-T. Her legs buckled before she knew she'd moved. She sank to the edge of the rusted bed frame, staring into the glass, transfixed. The surface rippled again, and the room beyond the mirror came alive. She saw shadows, dozens of them, pressed against invisible walls, mouths open in silent pleas. Women, men, children, pale hands clawing. And in the center, Harold Finch himself, eyes hollow, smile grotesque. He raised a hand and pointed at her. Her reflection mimicked the gesture, finger aimed directly at her heart. Her phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. The spell broke. She snatched it up, breath ragged. "Jacob," she answered. "What?" "Erin, listen," Jacob said, voice low, urgent. "I pulled records on Finch's son. Michael's not who he says he is." Her stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Birth certificate records show Michael Finch died in 1978. Age 12. There is no surviving son." The blood drained from her face. "That man you've been talking to," Jacob continued, "he's not Harold Finch's kid. He doesn't exist, at least not on paper." Erin staggered back from the mirror, heart hammering. The image inside still moved, even though she stood still. "Jacob," her voice cracked. "If Michael isn't real, then who have I been?" The mirror's surface bulged outward, warping like a balloon stretched too far. A hand pressed through from the other side, pale, veined, long fingers curling. She dropped the phone. The hand withdrew. The surface stilled. But the message lingered, scrawled across the fogging glass, "You are next." Jacob drove down that night, headlights cutting the black ribbon of Highway 16. When he arrived at the motel, Erin's car sat outside Room 6, but her phone went unanswered. The door was ajar. He pushed inside cautiously. "Erin." The room smelled of mildew and iron. His flashlight swept across the peeling wallpaper, the rusted bed frame. Empty. On the table sat the journal. Open. Jacob hesitated, then stepped closer. The latest entry was written in neat, deliberate strokes. Detective Calloway entered the collection at 12:43 a.m. His pulse thundered. "No." The mirror caught his light. He froze. Inside the warped surface, he saw Erin. She stood among the pale figures, eyes hollow, mouth moving in soundless words. "Help me." Jacob stumbled back, breath ragged. "Oh my God." The mirror rippled. The figures pressed closer, their hands slapping against the inside as if trying to break through. Aaron among them, reaching desperately. Jacob raised his gun. His hands shook. He didn't fire. Instead, he whispered, "Hold on, Aaron. I'll get you out." The mirror stilled, showing only his pale reflection, and the journal closed itself with a slam. The journal wouldn't open again. Jacob tried, his fingers digging at the leather binding, but it resisted like welded steel. The pages fluttered once in a phantom breeze and snapped shut again. Room 6 felt heavier than air, the silence pressing on his chest. He holstered his weapon, knelt by the table, and forced his voice steady. "Aaron, if you can hear me, I'm not leaving." No answer. Only the hum of the broken neon outside, flickering through the thin curtains. He pulled out his phone, snapped photos of the journal, and texted them to his own email. Insurance. Then he called in. "Bandera Dispatch," the operator answered. "This is Detective Jacob Ruiz, Austin PD," he said quickly. "I need immediate backup at Highway 16 Motel Room 6, possible officer down." Static. Then the line clicked dead. He stared at the phone. No signal. The mirror rippled faintly. "Damn it, Aaron," he whispered. "What did you do?" Morning light didn't bring relief. Deputies arrived, but by the time they stepped into Room 6, the mirror was inert, the journal gone, and Aaron's car sat empty with keys on the seat. "Maybe she just walked," one deputy muttered. "Detectives get spooked too." Jacob bristled. "She didn't walk. She's here. I saw her." The deputy gave him a sideways look. "You mean, in the mirror?" Jacob clenched his fists. "Yes." The man smirked, but Jacob didn't care. He pushed past, scanning the walls, the floorboards, the ceiling. His gut told him Finch hadn't buried all his secrets outside. Some were inside. By afternoon, Jacob was alone again. Deputies had left with nothing but shrugs. The media vans still swarmed outside, cameras trained on the motel, but no one dared step inside. He locked the door, pulled gloves on, and set to work. He tapped along the walls with the butt of his flashlight, listening. Hollow here, solid there. Near the mirror, the sound changed, muffled, almost damp. He pried at the wallpaper. Dust poured down. Behind the plaster, he found a cavity, narrow and deep. Inside, bundled in rotten canvas, lay cassette tapes, dozens of them. His breath caught. He pulled one free, brushing grime away. A label in smeared ink. April 1984. He found an old tape deck in the office, powered by a portable generator the deputies had left. His hands shook as he slid the cassette in and pressed play. Static then. A woman's voice, sobbing. "Please, please, let us go." A man's voice followed. Calm, almost soothing. "Finch, you're part of the collection now. You'll never be alone again." Jacob's stomach churned. He slammed stop, ejecting the tape, bile rising in his throat. Aaron had been right. The walls weren't just metaphor. They were archives. That night, Jacob sat in his car, staring at the motel. The tapes lay stacked in a box beside him. He should have taken them to evidence, but he couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he clutched Aaron's recorder. It had been lying on the floor of Room 6 when he arrived. He pressed play. Her voice filled the car, weary, trembling. September 22nd. "I think Finch is still here. Not alive, but present. The walls breathe, the journal writes, and the mirror." A sharp inhale. "The mirror is the mouth." "If I disappear, Jacob, you'll know where I went." Silence. Then a whisper. Not Aaron's. "She belongs to us now." The tape clicked off. Jacob's hands tightened around the device. He whispered into the dark. "Not if I can help it." The next day, he returned with tools, crowbars, hammers, lanterns. He sealed the room off with crime scene tape of his own. Ignoring the sheriff's orders to stand down, he set the lanterns in a ring. their glow fighting the shadows. Then he approached the mirror. His own reflection stared back, gaunt and sleepless. He raised the crowbar. "Give her back!" He swung. The glass shattered, spraying shards across the floor. Behind it, instead of bare wall, there was darkness. A tunnel. Narrow. Breathing. Cold air poured out, smelling of damp earth and rot. Jacob's heart pounded. He dropped the crowbar, slung a lantern into the gap, and crawled through. The walls closed around him, dirt and wood and something softer, like fabric or flesh. The lantern flickered. Ahead, voices whispered. Dozens, hundreds, come closer, come closer. He swallowed hard. "Aaron," the voices swelled, overlapping until one rose above the rest. Her voice. "Jacob, help me." He pressed forward, deeper into the dark. The tunnel narrowed as Jacob crawled, lantern clutched in one hand, his free palm scraping damp soil. The air grew colder, heavier, laced with the smell of rot and rust. Every breath felt stolen. The whispers thickened around him. Some sobbed, some begged, some laughed brokenly, but threaded through them all was Aaron's voice. "Jacob, this way." He pressed on until the passage widened abruptly. His lantern light spilled into a vast chamber. The walls weren't wood or stone. They were lined with faces, pale, translucent, pressed into the surface like wax figures half-formed. Their mouths opened and closed silently, eyes rolling beneath thin layers of earth. Jacob's stomach lurched. He stumbled, lantern trembling in his hand. Dear God. In the center of the chamber stood Erin. She looked whole, but her skin was pale, her eyes too dark, her movements too slow. She extended her hands toward him, lips trembling. "You came," she whispered. He rushed forward, grabbing her wrists. Her skin was cold as marble. "We're getting out!" Now her gaze flicked to the walls. The hundreds of faces. "I can't leave them." "Yes, you can." You're not theirs behind her. The chamber stirred. A shape rose from the soil, massive and looming, coalescing into Harold Finch. His grin stretched unnaturally wide, teeth black as tar. "This is my room," he rasped. "They stay." "She stays. You can join if you like." Jacob raised the lantern high. "She's not yours." Finch's hollow eyes glowed. "She is mine." "She listens. She writes. She belongs." The walls convulsed. Hands pressed outward. Hundreds of them, clawing, reaching. The air roared with voices. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" Aaron clutched Jacob's arm. "If you break the room, you break him." Jacob's pulse thundered. He looked at the lantern. The flame wavered inside the glass. He gritted his teeth. "Then we burn it." He smashed the lantern against the ground. Fire spilled, racing along the soil like oil on water. The chamber erupted in orange light. The faces screamed, their mouths opening wide in unison. Finch shrieked, his figure writhing, body crumbling into ash. Jacob pulled Aaron toward the tunnel. "Run!" They stumbled, crawling back through the collapsing passage as fire licked the walls. Hands clawed at their legs, voices shrieking, but Jacob kicked free, dragging Aaron forward. At last, they burst into Room 6, collapsing onto the rotting carpet. Behind them, the tunnel sealed with a deafening roar. The mirror frame cracked and fell, spilling ash. Smoke choked the room. Jacob dragged Aaron outside, gasping the cool night air. The motel sign flickered violently, then died, plunging the lot into darkness. For a long moment, the world was silent. Then Aaron whispered, voice raw, "They're free." By dawn, fire crews surrounded the motel. The interior had collapsed, flames consuming decades of rot. Deputies held the crowd back as black smoke curled into the sky. Jacob sat on the hood of his car, bloodied and ash-streaked. Aaron beside him. "You saved me," she said softly. He shook his head. I just followed your voice." Reporters clamored at the tape. Cameras flashed, but Jacob ignored them, staring at the burning husk of Room 6. The building groaned and folded inward, sparks shooting skyward. Erin reached into her pocket, pulling out something blackened, half-burned. She held it in her palm. The journal. Jacob's eyes widened. "I thought it burned." "It should have." The charred leather cover cracked open. Inside, one line of fresh ink shimmered across the first page. "The collection never ends." Erin slammed it shut, face pale. Jacob whispered, "Then we'd better make sure it does." The motel collapsed with a final roar, ash raining like snow. 2 weeks later, Highway 16 was quiet again. The motel lot had been bulldozed into a flat patch of scorched earth, ringed with police tape that sagged in the wind. Travelers drove by without slowing, unaware of the ghosts buried beneath their wheels. The investigation made headlines for days. The vanishing at Highway 16 Motel, solved. The question mark was never dropped. Authorities confirmed they had found human remains in the collapsed crawl spaces, fragments of bone, dozens of wedding bands, children's toys melted into unrecognizable shapes. But no names could be confirmed. Families of the missing still hovered in limbo. Erin stayed in Austin with her mother, who wept every time she touched her daughter's face, as if afraid she might vanish again. She rarely spoke of what happened inside the motel. At night, she woke screaming, convinced she heard Harold Finch whispering from the shadows. She kept the charred journal in a locked drawer, too terrified to burn it, too terrified to keep it close. Jacob tried to return to routine, case files, courtrooms, clients, but the work felt hollow. He caught himself staring at mirrors too long, waiting for shapes that never appeared. He drove Highway 16 once more, parking at the flattened lot. The scorched earth stretched silent and empty. But when the wind shifted, he swore he heard voices, faint, pleading. At the library archives, he dug deeper. Motel ledgers missing pages, Finch's old notes redacted in police reports, anonymous donations funding the motel's construction in 1965, traced back to shell companies that dissolved overnight. Each lead unraveled into nothing. It was as though the place had always been there, waiting, feeding. One evening, Jacob visited Erin. She sat on the porch, knees tucked to her chest, the journal on her lap. "I hear them," she whispered. He sat beside her. "The voices?" She nodded, eyes wet. "They're not gone. They're trapped. They keep asking me to write." Jacob touched her hand gently. "Don't." That's how he kept them. Erin stared at the horizon, the sun sinking crimson behind the hills. "But what if I stop and they fade? What if the only way they stay remembered is if I keep writing?" Jacob's grip tightened. There's a difference between remembering and binding. Finch didn't preserve them. He imprisoned them. The silence stretched. Crickets sang. A dog barked somewhere down the road. Erin finally set the journal aside. "Promise me," she whispered. "If I start writing, if I can't stop, you'll burn it." "Even if I fight you," Jacob swallowed hard. "I promise." They sat in silence until the stars came out, the journal between them like a sleeping serpent. On Highway 16, truckers rolled past the ruins, headlights sweeping across the flattened earth. For a heartbeat, the ash seemed to shift, faces pushing up from beneath before fading back into the soil. The land was quiet again, but not empty. The collection was patient,